How do I find a new job? How can I make a career change? And the biggest question of all, can I really find a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to be at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I get what companies are looking for when hiring top talent. What that means for you is an unmatched combination of insider knowledge and the best kept secrets about making heart-based career changes and navigating the ups and downs of job searching in today's world of work. Whether you're a recent graduate navigating the job market for the first time or a seasoned professional ready for a career change, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to be challenged and inspired to move beyond your self-doubt and take the right next steps towards landing a career you love. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm Jen Smith, your host, and today we are talking about a topic that I know so many people wrestle with, and that is how to quit your job with grace while making space for joyful ambitions. So this episode is for anyone who is feeling stuck or drained or out of alignment with their current role or company, but doesn't know how to move on without feeling guilt, fear, or regret. So we're going to talk about why letting go is so difficult and why it's also necessary for your growth. We'll discuss a few signs that it might be time to move on. I'm going to share a step-by-step guide to quitting with grace. And then we'll wrap up by talking about what it means to embrace joyful ambition and how pursuing it can transform your entire career. So by the end of this episode, you'll have the tools and mindset to approach this year with clarity, confidence, and grace. So let's start with a truth that can be tough to hear. Sometimes we hold on to things like jobs or roles or projects or responsibilities that no longer serve us. Why? Because letting go is hard. For me, the idea of quitting was ingrained as something bad from a very young age. So growing up, my mom had one golden rule. If you start something, you have to finish it. Whether it was a sports team, a club, an after-school activity, whatever it was, quitting wasn't an option. Now, looking back, I can see the value in that lesson. It taught me perseverance, commitment, and how to see things through. But it also planted the belief that quitting equals failure. And that belief followed me throughout my entire life pretty much. And so maybe you felt this too. Maybe you've stayed in a job longer than you should because you didn't want to disappoint anyone, or because you felt guilty about leaving your team behind. Or maybe it's fear. There's fear of the unknown, fear of judgment or what other people are going to think, fear of making the quote unquote wrong decision. But here's the thing. Quitting doesn't have to mean failure. Sometimes the most courageous and necessary step you can take to honor your growth and make room for something better is to let go. So let's reframe this. This is a powerful reframe that I've been talking with a lot of folks in the community about. Instead of thinking about quitting, think about completing. So when we reframe leaving a role as completing a chapter, it shifts the entire narrative. So instead of focusing on what you're leaving behind, you're celebrating what you've gained and making space for what's next. This reframe ties beautifully into the work of Annie Duke, who is a former professional poker player turned decision strategist. She has a book called Quit, and it's called Quit: The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away. And she explores how knowing when to quit is a powerful skill. And this is based on lessons from her poker days that translates beautifully into our professional lives. So the difference between an expert and an amateur poker player is that experts know when to quit. They recognize that the odds are not in their favor. Maybe they're tired, the competition is too strong, or the conditions just aren't right. Instead of stubbornly pushing through, they cut their losses and save their energy for better opportunities. The same is true in our careers. Sometimes sticking it out isn't grit, it's more about resistance. And when you ignore those signals that it's time to move on, you're limiting your chances of finding something better. Annie Duke reframes this with a simple question. What are the odds of joy if you stay? So if you stay in a draining, unfulfilling role, the odds of finding joy or fulfillment are close to zero. But if you leave, even with some uncertainty, the odds might be 50-50 or higher. And let's face it, 50% is a lot better than zero. So it's a reminder that letting go isn't about quitting or giving up. It's about making a thoughtful, calculated decision to prioritize what matters most to you. And let's pause for a quick reality check. Most of us are going to spend around 90,000 hours working. That's almost a third of our lifetime. Let that sink in. So if you're going to dedicate that much time to your career, why not make it joyful? So let's talk about how to know if it's time to complete a chapter in your career. Here are a few common signs. Number one is if you feel drained or stuck. So if your work constantly leaves you feeling exhausted, unmotivated, or uninspired, it might be time to move on. Your values don't align with the company's mission or the culture, or the leadership of your team no longer reflects your personal values, that's a sign to move on. I recently worked with a beloved, and the company really valued productivity and getting things out the door. And one of her core values was quality, and she wanted to take her time to make sure the quality was spot on. Those two values were in complete competition of each other, and it really was pretty eye-opening and helped her move on. Another sign is that you've outgrown your role. There's no room for meaningful growth or new challenges in your role. That's a clear signal that your time might be complete. Another thing I see pretty often is that you're staying out of guilt or obligation. So if you're staying in a role or at a company because you don't want to disappoint others, it's worth asking, are you sacrificing your own happiness for someone else's comfort? One of the things I really felt when I knew my time at corporate was complete was this emptiness. I felt this emptiness inside me that there just wasn't anything else for me in that space. And I knew I had more to give, but just in a different capacity. So I would encourage you to reflect on some of these signs and be honest with yourself. If they resonate, it might be time to take the next step. Now, when you've made the decision to leave, how you handle that transition is important. So let's talk through a step-by-step guide to quitting your job with grace, even if you really just want to rage quit. I definitely don't recommend that. So first, we want to reflect and get really clear. So before taking any action, take time to reflect on your decision. So you could ask yourself some things like, what am I moving toward? Is my role and my time here complete? How does this decision align with my values and my ambitions in terms of what's next? So the more clear you are about your reasons, the more confident you're going to feel when it's time to actually have the conversation with your manager. The next step is that you want to write a thoughtful resignation letter. So I always recommend putting it in writing because you never know what happens with the rumor mill once a conversation is had. So I recommend keeping it short, positive, and professional. You don't have to give any details other than you've decided that it's time to leave, you're grateful for the experience, and when your last day is. So those are kind of the three key points that you want to put in a thoughtful resignation letter. So it might sound something like this. Dear manager, after much reflection, I've decided it's time to pursue a new opportunity that aligns more with my personal and professional goals. I'm grateful for the experiences and the support I've received here. My last day is going to be whatever your last day is. And then you could also say something like, I will work diligently with the team to transition my work to the appropriate people. And that's it. You don't need to tell them where you're going, what you're doing, or anything else. The number one thing on your manager's mind, most likely, is going to be, oh my gosh, who's going to do this work? So letting them know that you're going to help with the transition will help put their mind at ease. Now, after you have your resignation letter written, it's time to communicate directly with your manager. So you want your manager to be the first one to know about your resignation. I recommend scheduling a meeting however you normally meet. So if that's normally by phone or video or in person, schedule a meeting. Do not do this by text or email or anything like that. So schedule the meeting. It can be a 15 or 20-minute meeting. It doesn't have to be anything drawn out. Let them know your decision. Just be very clear, kind, and concise. Don't over-explain or justify anything. Express gratitude and share your plans for the transition. Again, that's what they're going to be most worried about. And then from there, you want to plan your transition. So think about all the things that need to be handed over, whether that's documenting your tasks, training somebody to take over for some things that you've done, or wrapping up any projects. So showing that you care about a smooth transition is really going to leave people with that positive impression and mindset. And then, of course, you want to maintain relationships. So use your last few days as an opportunity to express gratitude to your colleagues and maintain those connections. You never know when your paths might cross again. So there's a few steps to help you through the transition process. And I will tell you, I have helped many, many, many beloved community members through this process. And normally the anticipation leading up to the actual conversation is more difficult and nerve-wracking than the actual conversation. So 9 times out of 10, I'll ask somebody how everything went, and they're like, oh my gosh, it was fine. It took, 5 minutes to actually have the conversation, and now we're working through the transition. But up until that point, all the work to prepare and the nerves and all of the things is so much greater than when you actually have the conversation. And I've been there myself. I know that this process is hard. And think about it. Breakups in general are hard, no matter if they're professional or personal. And that's really what this is. And because you care. And so it's going to make it even more difficult because you do care and you want to make sure that your colleagues are left in the best possible way. So now let's talk about making space for joyful ambitions. Leaving a job is never just about walking away. It's about walking toward something better. So when you let go of what no longer serves you, you're creating space for work that aligns with your values, your strengths, and your energy. This is the essence of joyful ambition. So it's about crafting a career that feels meaningful and energizing and aligned with your heart. Sometimes I think the word ambition gets a bad rap. For so long, it's been tied to hustle culture, burnout, and endless pursuit of external success like titles, salaries, and climbing a ladder as fast as possible. But ambition doesn't have to look like that. In fact, I'd argue that kind of ambition is outdated. Joyful ambition shifts the focus inward. So it's not about chasing society's definition of success. It's about pursuing what lights you up. It's about aligning your work with your values, strengths, and what brings you energy and fulfillment. And I know this firsthand. Early in my career, I thought about success as chasing promotions and paychecks and titles. But even as I achieved those things, I felt a growing sense of emptiness. That's when I realized that ambition doesn't have to come at the expense of your well-being. True ambition, joyful ambition, enhances your well-being. So let's talk about what joyful ambition looks like. Joyful ambition is very personal. It's about defining success on your own terms and aligning your career with your values and strengths. So imagine waking up each morning with a sense of excitement and purpose. Your work feels energizing, not draining. It sparks your curiosity. It fuels creativity. It makes you genuinely look forward to the day ahead. It's the kind of work that makes time fly because you're doing something that lights you up from the inside. Now picture your career aligning with your values. It's not just a job, it's an extension of what matters most to you. Whether that's fostering creativity or leading with integrity or collaborating with others to make a meaningful impact, you're working towards something that you care about. Every task, project, and interaction reflects that. And here's the best part. This alignment doesn't stop at your workspace or your desk. It supports your whole self, professionally and personally. So you're not sacrificing your well-being or relationships for the sake of work. Instead, your career becomes a source of nourishment, giving you the energy, freedom, and balance to thrive in all areas of your life. So it's about working and living in a way that feels intentional and authentic to you. Now, let's talk through some reflection questions for joyful ambition. So, if you're not sure what this feels like or looks like for you, I highly recommend taking a few minutes to reflect. The answers are within you, waiting to be uncovered. So, here's a few questions to guide your thinking. Imagine your perfect day. So, close your eyes and picture a day where everything feels aligned. What kind of work are you doing? Who are you working with? How do you feel at the end of the day? Pay attention to the details. So your environment, your energy, the pace, all of this can reveal what matters to you in this season of career. Now let's talk about energy. Think back to moments when you felt alive and energized, even for a few minutes. What were you doing? Were you solving a problem? What kind of problem? Were you creating something new? What was it? Were you helping others? How were you helping others? These moments have clues to the kind of work that lights you up. Another question here is, when do you feel in the flow? So recall the last time you felt completely immersed in what you were doing, when time seemed to disappear because you were so engaged. What were you working on? Who was with you? Why did it feel so effortless and fulfilling? Another question to consider is, what's missing right now? So if you feel a sense of restlessness or discontent, what's causing it? Is there something missing from your current role? Maybe it's creativity or connection or purpose or balance. Pinpointing these gaps can help you understand what you need to feel fulfilled. Another question here is to consider, what would you do if success were guaranteed? So what career moves would you make if you knew you would be successful and it was impossible to fail? This question often reveals hidden desires or ambitions you might be a little too afraid to pursue. But remember here, you're going to spend roughly a third of your life working, 90,000 hours. It's worth considering how you're going to spend that time. Now, I want to share an example of a beloved who worked through this process on a really important decision. And I've been in conversation with many folks who have been in this very same situation. So I want to share the story of Mia. Mia's a talented editor in a publishing company. So she works in the publishing industry. She's been in the industry for about 8 years, and she used these reflection questions to make a pivotal decision. So Mia was considering returning to school for a master's degree in creative writing. She thought that it was going to help her move up in her career and transition into becoming an author herself. But deep down, there was some uncertainty, and she wasn't sure if that was really the right next step, or if she was pursuing it because it seemed kind of like this logical next move. So she was feeling stuck. We worked together and we went through a bunch of these questions. So her perfect day didn't include sitting in a classroom or writing term papers. Instead, she imagined herself immersed in the publishing process, collaborating with authors, guiding creative projects, finding ways to bring stories to life. So she realized that she was really excited about elevating others' voices, not necessarily focusing on her own writing. When we talked about what brought her energy, she realized that she was super excited about brainstorming new ideas with authors and editors and building competitive narratives and working under the excitement of a tight deadline. So then she was thinking that the slower pace of an academic environment wasn't really going to be a fit for her, and it almost felt like a detour from the high energy and collaborative work that she really loved. Mia identified creativity and growth as some of her core values. She recognized that returning to school wouldn't necessarily foster that in the way that she had envisioned. And what she was really looking for was to deepen her experience and expertise in publishing while continuing to build meaningful relationships in the industry. When we talked about what was missing, she reflected on the gaps in her current role as a mid-level editor. She felt stagnant and felt like she was lacking opportunities on bigger projects or to work with more high-profile authors. And she thought a master's degree would open those doors. But her reflection revealed that she really needed was more challenging opportunities within the industry, not a return to school. And then when we talked about what she would do if success were guaranteed, she realized she wouldn't return to school. Instead, she would invest her energy in networking with senior editors, expanding her industry knowledge, and talking herself up for leadership roles that allowed her to oversee creative projects at a larger scale. So through this reflection, Mia realized her desire for a master's degree was mostly fueled by external pressures and industry norms and societal expectations, but it wasn't what she truly wanted. So instead, she uncovered her joyful ambition was to become a senior editor and eventually a creative director where she could shape the publishing process and mentor emerging talent. So this clarity gave Mia the confidence to let go of the idea of graduate school and focus on something that she actually wanted. And that's the magic of pursuing joyful ambition. When you let go and complete old chapters that no longer serve you, you make space for what aligns with your purpose, your values, your creativity, and it brings you confidence. Quitting your job with grace isn't about leaving something behind. It's about moving toward something better. So when you let go of what no longer serves you, you open the door to opportunities that are in alignment. So ask yourself, what are the odds of joy if I stay? If the odds don't look good, give yourself permission to complete this chapter and step into the next one filled with joyful ambitions. And to help you along the way, I've created a free toolkit, Graceful Exits and Fresh Starts. It's packed with resources to guide you through quitting with intention and stepping into your next chapter with confidence. I'll add it to the show notes for you. So this wraps up our 3-part series on laying the foundation for a fulfilling, radiantly happy, and healthy year ahead. Over the past few weeks, we've explored new ways to approach career growth through experiences. We've talked about how to set heart-based intentions versus rigid SMART goals. And finally, how to pursue joyful ambitions with grace. I hope these episodes have inspired you to step boldly into the year ahead. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week.